At its annual conference this year, LEAF has been debating the whole issue of natural capital, which is giving some kind of value to the ecosystem, to the services it delivers, to the soil, to the wildlife, to the habitat, and whether that is a way of making sure those things are enhanced alongside the continued production of food. Now, this is potentially a great space for LEAF because linking environment to farming already suggests that LEAF members have an understanding of how protecting those things does enhance the value of their farm, both in terms of its, if you like, habitat value, but also they've made it work in terms of productivity as well. Heard some very interesting presentations from the Environment Agency, from the government, from the Green Alliance, amongst others, and I think one of the things I would say is that at the moment this world of natural capital isn't close enough to farming. They're not talking enough the language of farmers and what really concerns farmers to be able to sell it to them as a proposition. And whilst I think it has got potential, it needs to think more about the value of food and food production in its model and the value of what farmers know and feel about their land if it's going to roll out successfully.
First and foremost, as a farmer and a farm manager, for me, primarily a food producer but also custodian of the countryside, and I felt that today, particularly from the Environment Agency and from DEFRA, there's still too much uncertainty as to where we're going and where we're heading with, these policies that they're coming out with. I also feel that not enough emphasis on food production, and it was raised in some of the questions, but that there wasn't really any sort of definitive answers given back and any definitive feedback. It's all still very concept based and very, what we'd like to do, and it's all still in the pipeline. And I guess for me as a farmer, I would like to hear a little bit more as to how food production is going to integrate with the environmental challenges that we're going to have to deal with in the future.
Well, what struck me is that it's really exciting and there's lots of movement going on and things are changing, which is really good. But I do think that we're moving 2 steps forward and 1 step back. We do need to join the food market with the land capacity and what's it's capable of doing.
Yeah. I think from the point of view of the farmers, there is a concern. There seems to be a trade-off between producing food and protecting the environment. And in an ideal world, the two should go hand in hand. But I think most of the farmers here saw it as a conflict. I think that was reflected in the questions that came up afterwards.
I've taken one field that I've been doing in-depth soil tests over the last 15 years. And when we started this, just looking at the organic or the soil organic matter, it was under 3% on a heavy clay soil. And last year, 2015, it measured at over 8%. Now there is debate ongoing at the moment about how accurate the soil tests are. However, I don't want to get involved in that. All I'm been able to show is that there has been a gradual or even maybe a rapid increase in soil organic matter that we have measured. Other measurements you could look at are the biology in the soil. Both this can be shown on soil analysis or by simply looking at the size and the number of worms in the soil, the number of maybe ground beetles and the other bits and pieces of wildlife and fauna that we have around and within the fields. Where I want to go with this is to turn not just a product we're selling off the farm being a commodity crop, which at the moment we're at the best breaking even on, but how can I as a farmer get some capital and turn some of that natural capital into financial reward for hopefully farming in a good way.
But something needs to be done to address the problem that farmers are not getting value for their food. And I think once that happens, they will be more open to seeing the trade-off or the compatibility of farming environmentally with their food production.
There's been some really fantastic presentations about what might be post-Brexit policy. I think the two things that really struck out for me is there's still further work to be done to integrate the DEFRA Environmental 25-year plan and the food and farming strategy. There doesn't need to be a conflict, in my view, between farming and the environment, and that rebuilding our natural infrastructure is really imperative both for farming and the environment. And I think that there came out this morning that there was still some division in thinking, I think, around that there is some way that competitive farming and the environment still have some divide between them. Farmers currently are not making much of a profit because the ecosystem is degraded, and if we can invest in the natural infrastructure we can help both them and the environment, and I think that's what the LEAF conference is hopefully trying to bring together, is that thinking of how we can do that in the future. So it's really good morning. Thank you.
I think it was very interesting to hear about a topic which is touched on at farm level and through the supply chain at this time, but not in any particular detail or knowledge that probably anybody really knows what they're on about, to be frank. We're involved in work around ecosystem services, and this work very much sits within a natural capital context. But I think Tom Heap's question around where does food security and food production sit within it, I think is very pertinent, and it's a question that if it hadn't have been asked, I did intend to ask it, because ultimately what is the consumer who's buying the output of what farmers are producing? They're the ones that really need to kind of buy into this, as much as it's that the farmers are actually delivering what the public would like to see happen. But with policy being so disjointed, and with all the changes that are happening at a European, international and a UK scale on policy, with having such a long plan that doesn't actually have any definitive outcomes at year 5 or even year 3, makes me slightly worried that this will just end up being something that happens of a jam tomorrow, rather than actually being something that actually results in productive change for the future of policy. And also the connection that if this gets merged to just being a Brexit solution, I don't really think that it should be disjointed from actually how we make implementation happen post-Brexit, and it needs to be all connected together with government departments all behind it, rather than just DEFRA here talking about one plan from one perspective of environmental outcomes.
Yes, I felt that the presentation has been very well done. The speakers were all very much on the subject. I fear, as far as the farming hat is concerned, that perhaps some of this is a little premature, getting farmers to take some of these ideas on board. It'll be a task, but I think that once we have Brexit in place, when we have a better idea of where that's going, we'll make more sense of what everybody's been saying this morning.